to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome Nick and Alex from The Silver to the podcast. The Silver will release Looking Glass Hymnal Blue this Friday with Gilead Media. The guys talk about being one of the last releases on Gilead and releasing music with the knowledge that the label is going away, how traditional heavy metal informs their sound and creative process, working with Paul Romano on the album artwork, the multiple layers to the album's title, and more. Looking Glass Hymnal Blue is an incredible record. It is so multi-layered and experimental while playing in this heavy metal and black metal sandbox. And it's one of the coolest records I've heard all year, so make sure you check it out. This conversation with Nick and Alex was a lot of fun to have, and I'm so excited to share it with you. Thanks so much for checking out this episode of As the Story Grows. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, welcome. If you aren't subscribed to the podcast, I would love it if you subscribed on your podcast platform of choice. You can find links in our show notes or at asthestorygrows.com for our mailing list, our Discord server, and our Patreon page. Enjoy today's conversation with Nick and Alex from The Silver. Are you both currently up in Philly?
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are separated. I've been up in the mid-state woods of New York for like a few years. So I'm like right outside of Kingston, if you're familiar with the Hudson Valley at all.
Not really, but that's okay.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
I'm very familiar with Philly because I lived there for 6 years, but
yeah, that's my home. That's my home, but this is
nice.
Yeah, this is nowhere near as important.
Nick, where in Philly are you located?
I'm in South Philly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Where did you live when you were here?
Fishtown.
Fishtown.
Yeah.
South's the only Philly. Sorry, I hate to tell you. No, I'm kidding.
It is the best.
Yeah, I dream. It's like the only place that's really felt like home to me my whole life.
Nice.
Where are you now, Brian?
Just outside DC. This is where I grew up and where I'm originally from, and so I didn't think I would ever move back here. And then COVID happened, and we left Philly, and we're here again. And
when you say we, is that a family?
Me and my wife. Yeah, family. Yeah. So
cool.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious. Is this new album the last release Gilead is doing?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I think the second to last.
Yeah, I think there was they're on their way out, and there was some stuff floating around. I thought we were going to be the last for a second, but I think
I think for a time we may have been, but
I think that's true.
I don't know what the last release is, but
sure, yeah,
more of an Enrique question probably. But I know that we are not now the last.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, how does it feel being kind of releasing this album on a label that is, going away? For me, just speaking personally, like Gilead's a name that's been around since I was a kid. Yeah.
I associated that with, there were a lot of people like in the Philly scene because I lived outside of Philly for a long time. And so the one half of it for me is like, whoa, like this name that was kind of like ambiently around me and like putting out some records that floated into my life as a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a crazy feeling, and I feel honored to be a part of it. But I don't feel, I don't know if you're asking sort of like you imagine that you're working with your label for a continued period of time and this is on the way out. I don't, with the way things like work now.
Yeah.
In the music industry, I'm like, it's amazing to get the object made and have the bureaucracies dealt with so that the object that we like envisioned having can be made. Like, for me, that's like the biggest thing. And it's like, labels, unless you're at like the fucking top of the echelon, are not going to be throwing money at you to make things happen anyway.
Right.
So it's kind of like, I'm sad, but it's also like glad we get to do it with him while he's still kicking, and that's just my personal feeling is like, cool, it's happening. It could not be happening, you know?
Yeah.
I think I would land along the same lines. You know, it's certainly an honor to be part of the end of the story and a little bit before for Gilead. You know, it's a name that's out there. Yeah. But I don't think labels are like as storied as they were in the past, at least not for like metal music. You know, you think of like 80s labels, there's Combat and Shrapnel and Metal Blade, and some of those are still around, but not all of them. I feel like a lot of what we do, at least, is like really apart from the label. Like the label certainly supports us, but we're kind of in our own realm, so to speak.
Yeah, you're kind of just happy to have them press the vinyl, and then like y'all take it and have it at shows and be like,
yeah, and like of course we care about, like, you know, I have a deep empathy for the business side, and like I want whatever, you know, whatever return is like necessary, and like in a, you know, not in like an overly grandiose or like profit driven way, but just like, you know, there's work and money and labor on his side, and we want to see this, whatever stock he needs to push go and stuff like that. But yeah, to echoing what Nick was saying, like I've been lucky enough where like I haven't had any, like I haven't been on a part of any projects where the label is like pulling any strings, really. So I don't know. It's kind of utopian in a weird way. And I'm just like, damn, like I've been in the seat of paying money to make the object, and it sucks.
Yeah.
Not that we're not, you know, the people in the band are putting money into it, but yeah, I mostly just feel thankful.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just curious because it's like a truly unique position to be like releasing something on a label that you know is going away, right? Like, I don't know who else could say that out there, you know, the handful of bands who have released stuff on the label here the last year, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's very true.
Yeah. Let's go back in time and let's just talk about what got each of you into music, and kind of maybe specifically like metal and heavy music.
Whoo. Well, Nick's got the best stories for this. So I
mean, I started with Black Sabbath. It's not much of a story, you know. It apparently was on the radio. I was probably 12. And I don't know why, but my dad recognized that I liked it. I don't even know what I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. I don't know what it was that he recognized. So I think shortly thereafter, he like, you know, we got out of school or something, and he bought me a CD, and it was like Black Sabbath Reunion 2 CD. Unbeknownst to him, it was live. And like every other word was fuck. So he put it on in the car.
Oh man.
And, you know, it's just Ozzy just saying, come on, you fuckers, or whatever, for like 20 minutes. And I remember we drove home, and like, I just thought to myself, like, I really want to keep the CD, and I feel like he's just going to take it. And he didn't. He just gave it to me, and it was like, just don't let your mother hear this.
Nice.
And then like a couple of weeks later, I think it was my birthday or something, and he like bought a different one that was like a greatest hits comp. We sold our souls for rock and roll. It kind of started from there. Sabbath, Ozzy, related to that. I got into Metallica. And then I was always reading. I always had the CDs, so I was always reading the liner notes and like seeing who they thanked, or like who they covered. So I had Metallica Garage Inc., and they had that Merciful Fate medley on the 2 CD expanded version. And I was really into that. I don't know. I don't really know why, but I was like, their cover's terrible, but I was like, I really like whatever this is. I really like whatever this is. So I got Don't Break the Oath around that time, and I was getting into Iron Maiden around that time, and like from then on, I was just full on.
Yeah.
You started going to shows pretty early on too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was 13. I saw Maiden with Dio. That's like still the greatest show I've ever been to.
It's crazy.
I mean, that sounds amazing.
And Motorhead.
Not a story. Remember?
But yeah, that was kind of my gateway. I've always been obsessed with metal stuff since that period of time. In the way of like extreme stuff, I think like Merciful Fate was kind of the doorway, and then I would just back then it was like metal on the internet was this was probably like 2002, 2003, so it was like early internet days, early metal on the internet days. I would just read what I could. You couldn't stream back then, so you kind of had to get like the 25-second like FYE or Amazon clip that you could get if they even had it. So I think it might have been like Immortal, Sons of Northern Darkness or something that like, and Dissection, Storm of the Light's Bane, because there was a Slayer cover on the expanded version, and I knew Slayer, so like once I heard those things, it was just, I never looked back, I guess.
Yeah, then you're on the trail of like, what's heavier, what's more extreme, what's crasser.
I did end up coming full circle. Like when I was in college, when I was a little bit older, I kind of burned myself out on black metal. I was always more of a black metal guy than a death metal guy, but I went back to like heavy metal. I think I discovered Pentagram around that time, and like 80s US heavy metal, Manila Road, stuff like that, like right before all those bands kind of came back. Yeah.
I think it's important just as I'm lucky enough in my version of life that the people that I work with musically and who I call my closest friends are people who have many of them have been lifelong lovers of metal. And I've also been that way since I was little, but I've also had like the sort of very lucky experience of return, like almost having a return to it after kind of like pushing it away for a number of years. It's long past that point now, like almost a decade past that point. But I mean, just because Nick is telling his story, and when you asked, I kind of lit up because I kind of look at Nick as like one of the most knowledgeable metal historians that I like know, and comes from a place that like is, I think, a little bit different than, just like having gotten into like a type of metal and being in, gone down a couple of avenues. And, like when I was a kid, for a long stretch of time, like I was just like a thrash metal person. You know what I mean? Like that was like that was one of the first, there were only a few avenues of metal that I really felt like I was like super, super into. And now later in life, like I feel like I'm like every door is open and I see the way that it all relates to each other. And like, there's so much more. And Nick and MJ and Jamie, who are all in the Silver, were all like a big part of like me, like sort of coming back into a fold after stepping out for a long time. Cause I've been a musician my whole life, and metal was like my first love. But then I got really into improvised music and experimental music and jazz, and I studied that for a while and was like really trying to get into that world. And then I started playing with Horrendous now, which will be 10 years ago this year, which is insane. And yeah, I mean, when I was young, I did not have the parental. I remember Nick's story about his dad a lot because I did not have that influence, and it was late. I was like I got my first CD player when I was 8, I think, and it came with like I think my mom's like best friend gave me like a Backstreet Boys CD or something, just because like that's like what was hot at the CD store. Like I didn't even know who they were. But I was really into video games, and I was really into video game music, and I would turn the games on and listen to stuff a lot. So they were just like, just give this little shit, like whatever, they're going to put it in their headphones and listen to it. And I did, sure enough. And then I started meeting friends in school that were really into music shortly after getting a CD player. Nice. And even though my mom claimed to be a huge music fan, there was no sharing. There was none of this, like, check the CD out. There was none of this, like, I'm going to put this song on, like that. I don't know how, like, it just didn't happen. And, but people started giving me mix CDs, and I would get mix CDs with all kinds of stuff. My one friend Tabrea gave me like a mix CD of like rap songs. My friend Nick Ravello gave me Offspring CDs and Green Day CDs. And that was the first time I heard distorted guitar, like on anything, pretty much.
Nice.
And I listened to these like Offspring and Green Day records like way too much. And very shortly after that, I met my first friends who were like into music that would use the word metal in some way. It was like there was like some like emo kind of screamo stuff running around, and then the person that would become like my best friend in my teenage years, Chris Kaler. They were super into like Lamb of God and like a bunch of folk metal and like Dream Theater, and had a stepdad who was really into, was a CD collector and would just throw us CDs, and this kind of stuff started to trickle down. And eventually that got me into I was mentioning this earlier. I like really became a thrash head. I played in my first metal band as a 13 or 14-year-old. Band was called Striker, and it was like stupid dumb thrash. Like we just like really liked Sodom and like Violence and stuff like that. And there was a kind of scene in my town for that. And it kind of grew from there. I actually had the opposite experience of Nick, where I didn't like dig that much traditional heavy metal. I heard it. I heard Dio. I heard Iron Maiden. I heard Priest. I heard Metallica. Even as a thrash head, I was like not that into Metallica, which I would later learn was a deathly wrong piece of taste in my system. But then stuff started to blow up. I started getting into other musics, and all of a sudden, like death metal and progressive metals and all these things were seeping in, and that just got the end of my high school career was really insane. Like I was listening to I was obsessed with like Cynic, and like Trace and Air came out when I was in early high school, and like I listened to that like nonstop. But I was also getting into like neo soul and jazz and like fusion and shit, and a lot of it just didn't make a lot of sense. And then I would meet Nick and MJ and Jamie, and I would realize that traditional heavy metal is the greatest thing on planet Earth. And now just like listen to Judas Priest and Dio more than I do like most things.
Nice.
So I've become an old woman in my in my tastes. But yeah, so it was a weird winding way for me.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Silver. You both have been in a bunch of Philly metal bands and have long careers, but let's just kind of focus on the Silver. What was the genesis of this project? Because that first record came out in 21, part of me thinks maybe this is like a COVID project, but maybe I'm wrong on that.
No, it's definitely wasn't a COVID project.
Okay.
I think the seed of the idea started between Enrique and MJ. I think Enrique had approached MJ basically asking like, let's do something that we can't do in our other bands. So that was the beginnings of it. And as I don't even know if they really knew what it was going to be. They knew it wasn't going to be like Horrendous or Crypt Sermon or Daeva. So I think the two of them kind of just jammed for a period of time and like hashed out kind of a couple pieces of early songs.
Yeah.
At that point, I think MJ would invite Jamie. Those two being brothers, they're very close collaborators, and it's very easy for them to write music together. Play bass, which is like his traditional primary instrument, which he doesn't play in any other band, at least that he's recorded with. MJ had the crazy idea to get me to maybe do vocals, which at the time sounded absurd, just because I had never sang on anything. He had never heard me, sing karaoke at that point in our lives.
Yeah.
So I think he would say something to the effect of like, he just had the idea that I would be good. I had known him since we were 16.
Newsflash, he was right.
We met in high school and bonded over heavy metal. So maybe he was onto something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So at that point in time, I was living on the West Coast. So I moved back in early 2020, and at that point in time, the music for the first record was essentially done. Okay. I met with the guys, and we started, they showed me what they had, and we essentially started to track the record. And then 2 weeks later, everything shut down.
Yeah.
And then
I forgot it was right at that point.
Yeah, it was Enrique recorded the drums, and then I think there was maybe 1 or 2 guitar days, and then we were doing nothing. A period of time passed, and it was all right, we actually have to start doing this.
Yeah.
We had to finish this in shifts or whatever.
Yep.
So that's kind of how it went. So not a COVID project. It was severely impacted by COVID, but not something that was born in the depths of all of us being locked in our basements and Zoom calling each other.
Nice.
Yeah. But in a way,
go ahead.
No, sorry. I just pointing to what Nick was talking about in terms of MJ inviting him in. I'm curious. So I have a different. This always happens in literally every project I'm a part of, because I was not a part of the band at this point, which I'm sure we'll get to at some stage. But MJ and Nick's relationship around music like this is very long and storied, and Nick also would hear every single thing that MJ and Jamie were working on, regardless of whether Nick was involved in it. So there's this kind of environment that's kind of festering and boiling all the time, and I'm curious, Nick, if you felt there was almost destined to be a time where something like this would happen, where you and MJ would collide in some way. Because to me as an outsider, because you were it seemed absurd to me, and when I heard that they had asked you to sing, I was well, yeah, of course, duh. That's literally a no-brainer,
I think the surprising thing was more vocally. I guess maybe it was always bound to happen, but I would have guessed in a different way.
Yeah, sure. Just curious.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's just jump ahead. How you ended up in the band?
So first record is recorded and finished without me. I mean, it wasn't even so much as a jam session with me. At this time, sort of simultaneously, the Horrendous's last record is also in this process of a bunch of music has been written, recording has started, lockdown fucks everything up. And I had sort of heard, I think maybe MJ may have sent me some demos, just being look at this thing. Because Enrique and I have actually been friends since we were kids. Enrique was actually satelliting the metal scenes that I was a part of, that I was talking about as a really, really young person, as a 14, 15-year-old. And I knew about some things that he had done, and I knew about some of his friends, and I'd seen shows at places where he lived. So of course MJ was check out this thing I'm doing with Enrique. And then the record gets done, and I hear it, and the topic of the fact that well, the guitars on the record are layered, this is the music kind of demands a second guitarist. And they were thinking about the fact that the record kicked ass, they're obviously they want to play shows, and they were would you be willing to play rhythm guitar or second guitar, whatever you want to call it? And I was yeah, which is kind of my lifetime MO as a musician. Almost every project I've been a part of has existed at first without me, and then I've kind of become an accessory to sort of help make the thing float, and then a step later become more of a part of the creative machine. So that's just how it happened. And that, so we've never played a show not together. I just wasn't a part of the writing and the recording of that first record.
Yeah. Because MJ, Jamie, they kind of spearhead this project, especially the first album, the writing musically. Do you kind of know what was going through their head, or have there been conversations, especially with this new record, of the creative process and just kind of the abstractness of, there's a guy I know, his tagline for his musical project is "genre is a fuck," and that's kind of where this band exists, right?
The headspace for the first album or for this album?
I mean, kind of for the band as a whole, this new album obviously expands on the first album, but I mean that first album is still very much an abstract look at black metal, if you will.
So I think the first record specifically, most of the individuals, myself, MJ, Enrique, were dealing with like personal things, external personal things in each of our lives. And I think that is really the key, like, genesis of one, the two of them wanting to do this in the first place as like an outlet to say, like, we have these things, we are going through these things, we have these things to say. I think this is the appropriate way to do it, like this kind of music. And that record was born out of that. Whereas this album, while it builds on what was initially done, I think all of our lives have changed in the 5 years it's been.
Yeah.
So, I mean, granted, a lot of this was recorded before, so even back then, changes had happened. I think this one is a lot more, like, internal, like, introspective, like, personal, like, not personal, but, personal demons type of subject matter, and that kind of drove this album. So inherently very different than the first album, which was like harsh, maybe aggressive, whereas this is more like, I don't want to say thoughtful, but like musing or ruminating on your own existence.
It seems like, there's definitely a lot more. The dimensions on the second record, I think there's quite a few that were added since the first. But I think Brian, you're pointing towards like the strange, perhaps somewhat strange genre space that the music occupies from a listening standpoint. And I think Nick probably feels similar, knowing MJ and Jamie very well, like working with them in other projects. Like, I know that this is how we have it. We have this in common, actually. At least I can speak for the three of us, MJ, Jamie, and I. Like, the genre questions are very porous and honestly not really to be heated much. There are musical logics and emotional logics and like sort of like, I would say sonic logics, or like logics of like excitement. I don't even know. Like there are aspects of metal. They're not aspects of genres of metal, right? And it's about like marshaling those elements in a way that does justice to every individual genre element that's involved, right? Which I would say, my personal view of the Silver, which I have that kind of interesting, like I have the outside perspective of not being a part of the first and now a part of the second.
Yeah.
There's a black metal field, there's a heavy metal field, there's like almost like an operatic, or like sort of like, it's not symphonic, but it's like, it has that grandiosity of some of those like more like cheesier kinds of metals or whatever, and they're all kind of thrown into a pot, but filtered through a very specific compositional logic that comes from like mostly just being musicians, I think.
Yeah.
And like just being like, metal has high flying solos. Just because I'm playing in a black metal field doesn't mean we don't have high flying solos. Like, why would I starve myself of a thing that I absolutely want?
Yeah.
So I think we're just not afraid. We don't really give a fuck about those things. So maybe to your friend's point, I don't think any of us would say genre is a fuck. It's important. But more is possible than maybe those containers allow. And I do think the Silver pushes on some of those containers a little bit.
Yeah. I mean the record, especially the new record, is super interesting because it takes so many twists and turns musically that, like, I don't know, this is not an album you can just go through listening to 30 seconds of a track and get in the preview of it, because like you're going to miss out on the whole scope of what it is. Like, it's the importance of the album.
Yeah. I think I'm curious how Nick feels too, but I do think the album as a whole is an important thing. It just maybe a less seemingly that idea has less purchase by the day.
Yeah.
Having like the whole fucking experience top to bottom actually saying the thing as opposed to like one or two tracks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm even thinking about like When the Moon is Three, which is like equal parts like Iron Maiden, high flying power metal song, and like it's a crazy black metal song at the same time. Like, who does that? Like, you guys. Like,
we've joked internally that it's like a black metal sabotage.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll say that, like, while not intentionally trying to do one thing or another, I think the idea, at least in my opinion, is like the spirit of heavy metal lives more in this band than maybe like any of the other bands. It's more about like the scale and the stage, not necessarily a particular sound over another.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of think about it, at least.
Yeah, I like that.
That makes sense. Album's called Looking Glass Hymnal Blue. That's the opening track. What led to that being the title of the record?
Whoo.
I think kind of what I was getting at before, like the internal dwellings, the looking glass, the musing over whatever your issue is. That was kind of the working title for a while. It was just like in studio. I think I kind of came up with it. A version of it, and then the whatever it is now is like what it was edited to. Yeah, that's really it.
Yeah, I have a little bit of like a sort of I don't know if everyone in the band would agree with this, but it's sort of like a subjective take on the material from my own perspective. Like, back to the question about genres, right? Like, at this stage of my life and having played as much metal as I have and having the privilege to work with people who think about it in such a loving and deep way, that genre question does become a little bit of like a looking glass, like mirror thing, where it's like every genre of metal like is so, like if two mirrors are facing each other, right? Like, or there's an image that's stuck between two mirrors, like they are separate. Like, you're getting a projection on one side and getting a projection on the other, but they share something. And I feel like they're impossibly entangled and also impossibly separate. If that makes, I know this sounds very abstract, but what I mean to say is that like, I really think that everyone in the band doesn't see things like black metal, heavy metal, death metal, any of as like so far away from each other. And there's a lot of things going on in terms of like the subject matter of the lyrics where like you could read them in, I'm not even going to say which, but I'm just going to say you could read them in this direction, or you could read them in this direction, depending on the song, depending on sort of like your poetic lens lyrically. And I just like Looking Glass hymnal and the hymnal, obviously, because there's so much like effusive, like song, like emotional song like quality on all over the record. Like, that's what it says to me, is that like there is this like prism of things to see, and also just considering the sort of like person, like sort of like very like almost like spiritual demons that Nick was referring to in terms of like the lyrical content, like that. I don't know, like that's the blueness to me, like it feels fitting to that. So that's like just kind of my subjective read on the title.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, you reminded me of something. A lot of us went to, like Catholic grade school and whatnot. So like we would have to go to church as part of that. And like the hymn book is the hymnal. It's like, it's there in all the pews. And like my grade school, for the longest time, the cover of the books were blue. Okay. So like, I think like that was probably in my mind. Yeah. And when we were working on the title track, the joking running title was Looking Glass Hymnal Blues.
That's right.
Like a blues song.
Like a blues, I remember that.
Yeah. Rock and roll blues #1 or whatever. Like that was the joke. And I think the title just kind of, the idea of blue being kind of like a a low energy, dull color. I think it kind of worked its way into our subconscious and stuck.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice. Paul Romano did the cover for this album. Did you guys give him any feedback or direction, or was it just like, here are the songs?
Quite a bit of collaborating.
It was more of a collaboration. I think all of us together, including Alex, would go. Paul would actually have us over for dinner, is how these things would start, and we would just talk for literally hours. Sometimes not even about music, about whatever movie he was watching on the TV. But when we would talk about the record, we would kind of express what we were writing about. We would send him lyrics. At that time, if we did have demos, maybe there was one kind of finished, something that we could show him. So that's kind of all that he got. We would meet with him, talk, and then in this case, years passed. A year passed.
It was long, yeah.
And then we kind of repeated it again. We went over to Paul's house and we talked about it, and we're here. We're a little bit farther this time. More songs are done. Whatever.
Yep.
And then I think we gave him the working album title, and I think that may have influenced his decision to use he used a very specific
photography process, right?
Yeah, cyanotyping to make the cover. But we didn't have any specific direction saying, hey, do this. That was all his creative direction based on just conversations that we had with him.
He's a very easy man to, he's the kind of guy that when you sit down with him, you feel like you can talk to him in a kind of from a poetic distance about an idea that you're working on, as it's forming, right? And he'll get it, he's in that headspace. I think just as a maker of things in general. I had written a small text piece. It's a poem essentially that is included in the record, and as that was getting edited, I shared that with him, and it wasn't this is what you should focus on to make it, but it was just here's another figment of this thing that is still kind of rising to the surface, and he was kind of taking all of that input from us at these different dinners, and then eventually he kind of came up with this idea. Painting over a cyanotype, which is just incredible.
What's the plan once this record comes out? It's about a month. Is there any plans for shows, tours?
So we are confirmed for Heart of Winterfest. That is next year, January. Okay. We're working out what the shows look like. So we want to do something in support of the record, whether it's record release plus a mini run. I think summer is likely, but nothing is fully firmed up yet. But we definitely want to get out there and play in support of the album.
I would just say, as a personal point of excitement, I haven't played guitar on a metal record since I was a teenager, because I've been on bass duties for so long. So it's kind of a return to a form that I've dreamt of for a long time. It's a super fun and super exciting record, and I hope that people actually get the object and get to dive into it. It is I haven't gotten to see the full thing myself yet, but I've seen the layouts, and it's a literal ocean to dive into. And I can't imagine, I don't even want to listen to the record anymore until I can have the frame around me, So that's my bid for everyone if they're interested in hearing the record.